Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for inviting me. Or did I invite myself? I'm not sure.
Doesn't matter.
I think I volunteered. So thank you. We're going to talk about reflective practice for home visitors. And I'm going to do it a little bit differently. Today, I want to sort of do this in a parallel process way. So start out talking about what is reflective functioning, which is an essential skill for healthy parenting. And then what is reflective practice, which is what home visitors do with the parents to promote reflective capacity for them to be parents. And then get to reflective supervision consultation as how do we support home visitors and keep it going. So that's the plan today. And I think I have a clicker. Yeah. Theoretically, I have a clicker. And maybe, or we can turn it around and I can push a button.
I hope we're actually figure this out.
So here's our plan for today. What is reflective? Oh, it works. Great. Thank you. So what is it and why does it matter? What is it? Why do we do it? And how do we do it? And then a little segue into having difficult but reflective conversations. What gets in our way, and using something that we've used at the Crisis Nursery a lot. We've taken it from a curriculum called Preventing Child Abuse and Neglect. This idea of self-awareness, careful observation, and flexible response as a way to do our work. And then get into reflective supervision and consultation, hopefully with enough time to think about for your own organizations what might be next steps. So here's a picture of a mother duck who does not have good reflective functioning. In other words, she isn't able to take her baby's perspective and realize that they're too small to walk across the grate and they fell through. Now, if this is very upsetting for any of you, you can go on YouTube and look up bad mother duck and see them rescued. I promise.
Keep going. I'm just trying to.
Okay, so I love this definition from Arietta Slade. Reflective functioning is a basic human capacity. It's what allows us to make sense of the people in our world. So when we think about that, we're also aware that that's a very developmental process, right? Think about toddlers. How much reflective functioning do we think toddlers have, right? Like, oh, if I take your toy, that might upset you, and I certainly wouldn't want that to happen, right? We learn to be reflective developmentally. I think toddlers are known for being, you know, the world is the way I see it. And then school-age kids tend to be a little more reflective. And in adolescence, kind of when hormones enter, they lose some of that reflective capacity in terms of, I wonder what it'll be like for my mother when I act out this way. But all of that can only happen if we have the experience of someone empathizing with us. It's a learned skill. And so when we think about it, what is it? It's the capacity to recognize mental states. So and that means feelings. How do I feel about that? What do I think about that? And what are my intentions in saying that? In other words, I don't think she meant it that way when she said it because I know her and her intentions are good. It's that kind of more sophisticated thinking. But it's also that I find myself dreading this home visit. And what is that about? Being willing to reflect on that. And I wonder why this mom seems so angry. Now, these skills may seem like no big deal, but think about the parents that many of us work with to say, you know, that baby's just crying to manipulate me. That baby's just crying to make me mad. She's 5 months old, but that parent may not herself have the reflective capacity to recognize that baby as a separate person with her own feelings and her own intentions. And then it's the capacity to link those mental states to the behavior. So I think I'm irritable because I'm so behind in my paperwork. I wonder if that mom is no-showing because she's afraid I'll judge her. I don't just take that no-show at face value. I'm going to step back and wonder what's the meaning of that no-show? What does that mean? And when you think about the parents, we see that. I wonder, being a home visitor and there's a crying baby and a parent who's unresponsive, and what gets aroused in that home visitor, and what's getting in the way of the mother's ability to respond to her baby. So wondering all those things in order to inform what intervention I might be wanting to take. So it's this attunement to our thoughts that allows us to read and interpret and respond to parents, and it's necessary for self-regulation, right? Because if I'm in a home visit and I find myself flooded or aroused, if I don't have the capacity to stay attuned to what's happening to me internally, I'm more likely to act out on that than if I were. And I'm also missing an opportunity to appreciate some information, that these feelings that are getting aroused in me are actually useful information because I'm reacting to what's happening in the room between this mother and baby. And if I can step back and look at that and regulate my arousal, I'm going to be more effective in intervening. And I love this quote too from Arietta Slade: "Without an emotional understanding of the child, parenting skills are of little use and remain empty recipes that bear little relation to the child's internal experience and needs." So maybe we're using GGK, maybe we're using parents as teachers, nurse family partnership. Excellent, excellent curricula. But if underlying our implementation of those curricula, we're not attending to promoting that parent's reflective capacity to take the perspective of her baby, we're going to miss it. So imagine a parent, you're going to try to teach a parent to play peekaboo. And this is a parent who may not have had the opportunity to have experienced someone empathizing with her. So think of an adolescent parent in particular. So you ask, say the parent play peekaboo. Now, most of us would know how to do that. Peekaboo, peekaboo, and you're monitoring the baby, and the baby looks like their attention's going away. Maybe the baby needs a break. You pause, or maybe you choose your affect to get the baby's attention again. But if I don't have reflective functioning, and you could tell this mom to play peekaboo with her baby, you might get peekaboo. But the parent knows how to play peekaboo, but they don't have the essential ingredient of, this game is about our exchange. This game is about matching each other, particularly my matching the baby. So I think that's why I like that quote so much. So if we think about what is reflective practice, another quote, Eureka Hall is the godmother of infant mental health. This idea that it isn't possible to work on behalf of human beings without having powerful feelings aroused in ourselves. That is absolutely pure and simple biology. The survival of our species depends on the baby's ability to maintain close proximity to a caregiver because there's such a prolonged period of complete dependence, and the caregiver's ability to be aroused and responsive to the baby's signals and cues for need. And so when we think about this in the context of home visiting, what an incredibly complex task it is. Because think of, if we're being reflective in the context of home visiting, we're going to be thinking about the mental state, the emotional state, the parents, other children in the family, other significant caregivers, what other professionals might be involved in the family, and our own internal perspective. We have to have that self-awareness. But I think if you were to map out all of the relationships that a home visitor has to attend to, it would look like a spider web. It's a lot of relationships. So we think of reflective practice as a portable lens. It's not like a set of strategies. It is literally a lens through which we see our work and the families that we work with. And it acknowledges that feelings are an essential part of the information, or for the work. So if we think about, if you've ever done home visit, how many of you have actually done home visiting? Oh, good. So do you ever have done a home visit where you walk out and you feel like, I gotta go to bed, right? Chances are you may well be working with a parent who's depressed, right? There's stuff that just comes in. And if we're attending to those feelings, we're going to be able to have an insight into that parent. Or you're in a household and you walk out of that home visit and you're practically twitching, and you think about what the chaos that's going on in that family is going to give you a real window into what it's like to be the baby there and what it's like to be a parent. So again, all of those feelings are things that we want to be paying attention to. And that all that behavior has meaning. What is this parent trying to tell me? She's being very abrupt with me today. Usually we do pretty well, but she seems to be upset with me. What can that be about? Where should I be pointing this clicker? Sorry. I'll just stick with the button. So reflective practice would be considered, it's the art of stepping back to examine what one is observing and doing. Basically, it's about wondering. I think if we had to name the #1 quality that we would want to see in a home visitor, it would be curiosity. That just wondering curiosity. I wonder why the mother's behaving that way. I wonder why she can't seem to hear this baby cry. What is that about? So it's about the opportunity to think about and analyze our own actions to improve our professional practice, in addition to wondering about what the meaning is of the behavior. It's about exploring and explaining events, not just describing them. And then analyzing our own anxiety, our own errors. That conversation really didn't go well. What got in the way? I was going to talk to mom about X, Y, and Z, and that didn't go well. I wonder why, and how can I repair it? What can I do next time we're together? So that means we have to allow ourselves not to know. And I think, in my experience, that's a professional development issue, right? Usually when we come out of school, man, I gotta know, and I do know. I mean, I know so much less now than when I graduated, but I think that takes a while. But in the context of reflection and supervision, we want to promote that not knowing. There's a quote from Khadijah Johnson that says, "Not knowing is the first step to understanding." So it's that idea that we never have all the information, particularly, I think, in the intimate context of home visiting. So we have to allow ourselves to be surprised and confused and to know that that's okay. And that's when we step back and get curious, right? And then to just wonder, why did I react that way? Why did the mom react that way? Why did I handle it? And what could I do differently? So it's a matter of thinking, if I'm the home visitor, I want to be continually questioning my own internal mental state and that of others. What's happening in this context? That, you know, those home visits where I could describe what's happening, but I can feel something else going on. There's something else happening here, and I just can't figure out what it is. And why am I feeling this way? And what's happened recently? So just among many other questions that we might be asking ourselves. So I think when we think about reflection, these are some of the important questions we want to be asking ourselves. What's it like to be this mom, either in general or in this very moment? What's it like for this mom whose child was just returned to her from foster care to have one more person coming into her house? What's it like for this mom who's of a different race and ethnicity than I am to have me from a dominant culture sitting in her living room? So what's it like to be this dad? And we so often leave the dads out of it. So, you know, dad doesn't live there, and mom doesn't even, you know, makes it clear that he's not a part of the picture, but we can still be wondering, what's it like to be this dad, and what potential is there for him to be a useful part of this, this family? And then what's it like to be this child? And again, I think so often when we talk about reflective practice, we can't do reflective practice without acknowledging that this is all about relationship-based practice, right? Because again, you have to be reflective to be in relationship. And one of the beauties of what we do as home visitors is that there are lots and lots of programs out there whose client is clearly the parent. And there are programs out there whose client is typically the child. And then an example of that, and this is oversimplified, might be early intervention, for example, or even early care and education, child care. But home visiting, our clients are the parents or parents, the child, and the relationship between the parent and the child. Because we know that is the most reliable predictor of a child's developmental outcomes. So I think to always keep in mind what a unique perspective we have in that regard, and then what kind of supports we need for that. Because we're holding all of these perspectives. And then I love this question that we don't often think about. What's the meaning of this child to this family? Is this a long-awaited child whose birth is celebrated? Is this a child who is unexpected and is perceived as a burden to the parents? Is this the child that was going to help mom keep the father engaged, and turns out that's not working too well? Is this a girl, and I'm terrified of having a girl because I'm afraid I can't protect her because no one protected me? This child is a boy. Does that mean he's going to grow up and be just like his abusive father? I mean, so I'm kind of giving those negative meanings, but I think what the meaning of the child is to the parent is an important question that we want to be asking. And then what's it like to be me in this home? Because again, that's where that self-awareness is going to guide our perceptions of what's happening. It's going to guide our interventions, and it's also, if I'm willing to stay aware, I'm going to know when I need supervision and when I really need to touch base with somebody. And then what does my presence mean to this family? So are all the programs in the coalition voluntary, or are some of the home visiting programs involuntary?
Some of them are involuntary,
okay,
but not many.
Okay, but that would be, what is the presence of the home visitor to family? Voluntary or involuntary obviously makes a huge difference. So I think that's another thing, and that's again where race and ethnicity can play a part. What is the meaning of my presence to the family? I often tell a story about my youngest child received early intervention services when she was a baby because she had developmental delays, and we had this lovely home visitor who came to our house. I hated her guts, and I hope she didn't know that, but what she represented to me was that there was something wrong with my baby. And every week she came to the door to remind me that there was something wrong with my baby, and she couldn't tell me if my baby was going to be okay. My baby is now an early interventionist, so she's fine, but I didn't know that then, and I was horrified being in the field that I would project these feelings onto the home visitor because of what she actually meant to me, and it gave me a lot of insight into what some of my helpful intentions might have meant to some of the other families I'd worked with over time. But again, why I think that's an important question that we're asking. So we often, and many of you who have heard me talk before have seen this, but I often use this in consultation. If each of the red arrows represents relationships, then again, thinking of all of the relationships that the home visitor needs to be mindful of in this work. So her relationship with the parent, with the child, but what's the parent's relationship with the child, particularly how does dad fit into the picture? Hopefully he does. Grandparents, and that doesn't even touch other professionals and folks involved with the family. So we'll have to keep track of. So I think, you know, what this comes down to in a lot of ways is this, I think this is the most powerful phrase that we have in our toolkit in many ways in home visiting. It's just, I've been thinking about you. And for many of our families, it's a fairly profound experience to find out that somebody actually is holding them in mind when they're not with them. And so it can be, I've been thinking about you, how did the doctor's appointment go? I've been thinking about you, and I don't feel very, I'm wondering about what our conversation last week was like for you, because I came away feeling uncomfortable, and let's revisit that. But again, just that idea that I've been thinking about you, because that's the parent job. We want the parent to be holding the baby in mind at all times. So this experience of I've been thinking about you, the parent, can be fairly profound, and again, it's an important part of the parallel process. By the way, ask questions at any point here. How we doing? Okay. All right. So we use open-ended questions because that acknowledges the complexity of the situation. It's like if you were to say to somebody, you know, maybe you're talking to your child's teacher, and you say, you know, I've been wondering about why he doesn't, or why I'm having trouble getting to do his homework. Well, do you have a regular time when you sit down with him? You know, and it's like, to have somebody come back with an easy answer discounts my experience or what I may have tried, and I think it has the potential to sort of belittle us. So it's more open-ended questions like, well, what have you tried? And how did that work? And what didn't go well? So one of the handouts that you have is this useful phrases handout that gives more examples of open-ended questions. And we've often used that as a cheat sheet. Not that anybody takes it with them on a home visit, but the idea is that, oh, wait, yeah, stop. But take it, so these are examples, obviously, of open-ended questions and ways to invite reflection on the part of the parent.
I don't think we got.
I don't think we have it.
We got this one.
Oh. We'll send it to you.
Okay. Yep.
Too bad, because it's really good.
You gotta pay extra for that.
Yeah. So, and this is developed with Molly at the Crisis Nursery, with Jane Ellison, some work that we've done with home visiting. I mean, I can say it's really good because I don't get to take all the credit for it. But it's things like, what do you think that's like for the child? How do you cope when you're feeling stressed? What do you enjoy most about your child? What's hardest about being a parent right now? One of my personal favorites is, you know, I want to talk with you about something, but I'm afraid that you might feel judged or criticized if I bring this up. So if that happens, you let me know, because basically you're asking permission to bring up a difficult topic, and you're also expressing concern about the parent, and you're giving the parent some responsibility for letting you know if it is offensive. So it's just examples of open-ended questions that would be typical that we use in reflection. And I think of critical importance is the fact that it acknowledges that the parent is the expert on her child. So again, I kind of cringe even when I say that phrase. We can say, well, the parent is always the expert on her child, and yet when we're doing home visiting and we're working with really challenging families, that may not necessarily be fully the case, right? If this is a parent who has little awareness of little reflective capacity to imagine what it's like to be your child, or has very limited information on child development, but she still knows her child and knows the child that she is imagining she wants to have her child become or to be. And so,
couldn't you kind of say that the mere fact that they want to engage with something is that they want to be, like, so it is harder for us to say they are the expert, but they want. So.
Right. They want to be the expert, and they are the expert in terms of knowing the ins and outs and nitty-gritties of their child in a certain capacity. I only say that because I've heard, I remember in a consultation, a home visitor saying, but she's such a good mother. I hear you saying she's a really good mother, but she also left her child alone in the car for an hour. So how do we put all that together? Well, she really loves her child. Absolutely. So it's that kind of context, which
Well, I was just going to say, at Simpson Housing, we never use the word like parent education with the families, but we say that we're your parent cheerleader. We're going to advocate for you, support you in the hard work you do every day, and you do know your child best, and we're coming in with information about general child development to help support you in the hard work you do every day, to support you however you want to be supported. And I find that whenever I use that term parent cheerleader, the family, one of my colleagues coined, the parents just light up, and you instantly see the sense of relief. Because we're making very clear with them that we're not coming in to educate you on how to be a parent. We don't use that terminology because then they will shut down. But saying we're your cheerleader, somehow that gets them to open up more.
I think that's lovely, because if I say I'm here as a parent educator, that, to me, that automatically assumes a power differential, right? And yes, there is a power differential. That's a fact in terms of, but we're coming in to partner, and so to say that we're the parent cheerleader is lovely, because it also implies the parent setting, to me it implies the parent setting the agenda.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Oh, I love that. Can I borrow that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Parent cheerleader. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. So we're going to try an activity here. And what I want you to do is to pair up. And those of you who aren't in the room, I'm not sure how you can do that, but you can watch us do it. I want you to pair up and think of a time when you were in an interaction with somebody that you found challenging. If it's a home visit, all the better. But if you don't do home visiting directly, you can just some kind of challenging. And then I want you to look at the questions on the slide. One of you is going to be the talker. One of you is going to be the listener. And the listener is going to ask these questions of you, the talker. Who is it you're talking about? Who is involved? What did you do about it? When did it happen? So these are pretty simple questions, but these are the types of questions I want you to ask the speaker. So pair up, decide who's going to be the talker and who's going to be the listener, and we're going to switch in a little bit. But let's just take a minute and practice this.
If I joined
I'm actually just trying to pick the.
Oh, okay. refocusing her situation for quite a long period of time. So ultimately we had a collaborative meeting that included our visitor and to go what led to the situation, did a lot of things with her.
So this might feel pretty strange, but try to stick to these types of questions.
How her day was, what she really wanted to do. What is that? And different
Take one more minute. Okay, let's come back together. What was it like for you? Any thoughts? Did it feel natural?
These questions were hard to ask because they had really nothing to do with what we were talking about.
There's one
They
point.
already came out, like, she was talking about, like, she was talking about the situation and answered, like, every one of those questions, so then it's like looking at, trying to figure out,
You're not supposed to be that articulate. You're blowing my activity here. Okay, let's try it another way then. Now I want you to switch roles. And same thing, talk about a challenging home visit or a challenging interaction you had with somebody. Only this time, these are the kinds of questions I want the listener to ask. So what was it like for you? Does this remind you of something similar? So I'm not talking about going down the list here, but you get the gist. Well, I wonder what it felt like to be the child or the parent. Go for it.
So when I first started the job, so let's see. Okay. And I, of course, Right, it was, after she and I stepped out and about that second conversation that unfortunately is really, they're used as either voice test or trying to figure out how to, they thanked for her, it was also the same goal, where at the very end, so we talked about how to use it, they did at the end, they were writing their end goals for their showing their Mom, very literally like walking through something or like really how like I saw lots of stories but had the like it right. That was our passion. We had like that was like not on the right and she had very there were opportunities for this, but it wasn't until the so then I'm like, go back, you know, there, like, well, wasn't any questions, well, creative care, and he says, follow-up.
Take about another minute.
How do you think there's still a lot of texting, I think that technology is a lot. I was trying to happen, right? There are a lot of well, yes, I do remember when texting came around, and now I can see where it would have been more challenging when I was at school, or not having what was going on like that. Yeah, but they know right away to get it. Right. Well, they know. I remember one of them, she remembers when she
Okay, can we come back together?
No,
I want to credit my colleague Tracy Schreifler for this activity. See, now this is more fun. When you hear people laughing. So what did you notice about the difference between the two experiences?
Flows better.
Yeah.
Sorry?
It flows better.
It flows better, feels more natural, because you're probably all naturally reflective people.
It was much more
Sorry?
It felt much more conversational.
More conversational?
I kind of feel like you kind of need to do a little dance, though. I hate to, but I feel that some of these questions, like, sorry.
It's fun. I mean, but you're right. It does have to be a balance. Sorry.
Next one.
Yeah. No, but you're absolutely right, because it depends on what the goal of the conversation is. But if there was a mixture, if it wasn't like this is an interview, it's like I think of the Healthy Families Parent Survey. It really flows. I'm always just astonished when I've read those reports at the amount of information obtained. And this is the first meeting with a family, because it's both, because you have to get some information, but then you follow the trail of the information with basically it's the idea that these kinds of questions that invite more reflection, conversation, would put someone at ease and demonstrate much more curiosity than questions that have a simple answer or are yes, no. So the point is that these are the essential kinds of questions that are necessary for reflective interaction, whether it's between the home visitor and the parent or between the supervisor and the home visitor. And ideally, you get down to this is the kind of strategies that the parent is going to be learning in her own interaction with her child. So again, the parallel process at work. I love this picture. So again, it's just this idea that our own feelings are an essential piece of information, but when you think about the pace of home visiting, when do we step back and actually have an opportunity to think, how do I feel about that? What's this little thing that's niggling in my mind that I just can't get rid of? Oh, that was what was going on. That it requires some kind of intentionality to be able to step back and pay attention to our own feelings and to examine the parts of our own histories, our own implicit biases, our own experiences that are the filter through which we're interpreting what we're seeing in home visiting. I'm gonna give a couple of those. So let's morph a little bit into how might some of these strategies be helpful in having hard conversations. So before we do that, what are some hard conversations in home visiting? Sorry? Safe sleep. Safe sleep. People tend to have strong feelings, right? Yeah.
I was in a home visit the other week, and for the first time I saw like ashtrays in the house, and it smelled really strong of smoke. So how to have that conversation with the mom about like the impact of smoking and how we do a harm reduction approach for like smoking.
Okay, so secondhand smoke and smoking and the impact on the child.
And drug use too.
Drug use.
Potential drug use.
Yep. Yep. What else? Discipline. Discipline practices. Absolutely. Birth control.
Domestic abuse.
Domestic abuse. Absolutely. So home visit, I mean, I don't know how you can do targeted home visiting without having to have difficult conversations. And, you know, so why is it important to talk about these things? I'm here to work on parenting and parent-child relationships. Why is it important to talk about these hard things? They have a huge impact on children, right?
Damage the relationship that you have too.
It certainly can impact the relationship between the home visitor and the parent, right?
Many of those topics are the purpose of why we're working with them.
Right.
So if we don't mention them or ask about them, then it's kind of, we're there just to be their friend, you know, and it's like that.
Right.
So you have to have those conversations.
And I completely agree, but there are home visitors out there who are not well supported enough, I think, to be able to have those hard conversations in a way that can be most effective. Because they are necessary, because it all impacts parenting relationships. So what gets in our way? What would keep a home visitor from having a conversation about substance abuse or discipline?
I think it's to his point that not wanting to feel like we're judging them.
Mm-hmm. Not wanting to feel like they're judging, that we're judging, because again, we sort of sometimes in home visiting, we say the goal of home visiting is to get invited back next week,
Right, exactly.
right? And a hard conversation could potentially really mess with that. Absolutely. What else gets in our way?
I think our cultural differences get in the way
Yep.
of hard conversations. And I think reflective conversations and practice is really helpful for home visitors in getting past the idea that it's okay that I don't know about somebody's cultural heritage or ethnic heritage. It's more important that I learn. I think especially in the white dominant culture, we're so afraid to get something wrong. And by being afraid to talk about it, I think we make more mistakes.
Right, and it's the elephant in the living room.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I have a request from on mine. If you are speaking, just speak louder. The speaker is here, or shall I use?
Sorry.
That's okay.
I got too engaged in the relationships in the room. I wasn't being reflective and thinking about the people who are not in the room. So it's about how do we balance asking the hard questions with the scope of our practice. Maybe I do home visiting in the context of early intervention or Head Start. is it really in my scope of practice to ask about substance abuse? And if I do, then what do I do with it, right? That's often the dilemma that we have. And I think it's thinking about, I can have the hard conversation. That doesn't mean that it's my responsibility to fix it. And I think that can take away some of that burden, that I will have the hard conversation, and in the back of my mind, I'm going to know what the resources are to link. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be responsible for it. And then how do we keep the kids in the lens? And I think that gets back to scope of practice in a way, because if I'm going to ask a parent about substance abuse or something more, like why they have no-showed for the last 2 home visits, how do I work that around? So the reason I'm wondering about this is because I've noticed that sometimes when you're with the baby, you seem so engaged and more, and attuned, and other times you seem very distracted. Can you help me understand what that's about? So it's being transparent about why I'm asking about hard things, and in the process bringing it back to the baby, which is my scope of practice, right? So the good news about home visiting is that it implies an extended relationship. And so within that relationship, we have opportunities to repair when those hard conversations don't go well. And part of thinking about having a hard conversation is that reflection on, do I have enough money in our relationship bank to bring this up? Or is this a conversation that I should defer for later, depending on the nature of the conversation? Because when we do have those hard conversations, often we're giving a parent, again, a pretty profound experience of a different way to have a hard conversation. That I'm going to ask you about this. I'm worried that you're going to think I'm judging you. I want you to know if it feels that way, I want you to tell me. And you're going to tell me something that's hard to hear. Yeah, I am using it again. And they're going to have the experience of, I'm not going to go away. We need to do something about that, and I will be with you every step of the way as we figure out together how we're going to do this. I don't just flat out reject you, nor do I reject you after 2 no-shows. And that adults, and when we're the ones saying, I'm wondering if, you're upset because I rescheduled that home visit 2 weeks ago because I had to attend a meeting. I wonder if that had anything to do with why you weren't here last week, because maybe you felt like I didn't think our visit was important. And if that's the case, I am really sorry. And the experience of having a person apologize, even if we didn't do anything wrong, was a required meeting, right? But seeing it from the parent's perspective and giving them the experience of an apology, or at least an inquiry about how they feel about it, again, is sometimes an experience that many of the families we work with haven't had previously. And then we can all have big feelings. This mom was so angry, she told me to leave. I'm going to show up again next week. And that, again, for a parent to act out, their experience is more likely that when a relationship is over, it's over. When I blow it, people are done with me. But in home visiting, we make every effort to come back and give parents that different kind of experience. So this is what I was mentioning at the beginning about talking about careful observation in these moments. I'm in a home visit. What's happening here? What's going on? There seems to be some tension here. I wonder what that's about. And then what's happening to me? Because in home visiting, we say when you think about regulating a tense situation, who's the first person you have to regulate? Yourself, right? Easier said than done sometimes. And then what's the flexible response? Is this might be a great response for the family I saw last week, but that's not going to fly here. Or I'm going to try it and it falls apart, and how am I going to shift it? And being intentional about timing and everything else, but being flexible in how we do that. So some of the stuff I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes is from something called the Wakanja Project, and I meant to put that up on a slide and I didn't. It's, anybody correct me, Wakanja, W-A-K-A-H-A-N-Z-A, I believe. And it's a program that was developed. Wakanja means, in Dakota, means child or sacred being. And it was a program developed with Ramsey County Public Health. And it's been implemented at the Children's Museum, I believe the Women's Advocate Domestic Shelter, and one other place. It's a way of being able to intervene when you see interactions that are disturbing. And so I want to give them credit for some of this. But when you see an interaction that's upsetting you, is this a good thing? So again, now we're thinking careful observation and self-awareness. What am I seeing here? Is this a good thing? Is a child in danger? Is this part of a pattern, or is this a one-time event? And then what's my relationship with this caregiver that's going, because that's going to give me more or less permission in the range of strategies I have to intervene when a difficult situation is unfolding in front of me. Because I think there are at least two kinds of difficult conversations. One are the ones we're going into the home visit thinking, I know I got to talk about this, but I'm nervous about talking about it, but I can plan for it. And then there are the difficult conversations that happen in the moment when you see a parent grab a child roughly or something that I need to respond to this and I don't know how. So these are some questions we might ask. Do I identify with the child or do I identify with the parent? Because I'm going to be having a very different internal reaction. So I can share one of my finer moments as a consultant in this. I was doing mental health consultation in childcare, and I'd been working in this particular setting for a period of years, actually, and I was always concerned about the toddler room. Toddler rooms it's hard to be a toddler teacher. But I walked in, and there was a child standing in the middle of the room crying. It looked inconsolably. He was standing there just sobbing, and nobody was paying any attention to him. And I identified with the child. I did not stay self-aware, and I said loudly, I don't ever want to come into this room again and see a child this distressed with no adult attending to him. Took about 6 months to repair the relationships, but that's what that can look like. That was a really inappropriate response, but it was a really close identification with that child on my part, with little reflective awareness of what the perspective was. I didn't even know what had been going on beforehand. But anyway, do I still have any credibility with you? But I use that example because I think it's a really easy thing to have happen. And some of us tend to identify more with the child. Some of us tend to identify more with the parent. If this kid would just stop whining, this mom could catch a break, right? That makes sense. Am I feeling judgmental? And sometimes that judgment comes out before we even are aware of it, as much as we may try to mask it in something else. And what do I not know here that could help me understand this situation? Because we never know everything, right? And then is culture influencing my reaction? Because I think one of the things that, it's becoming more a part of our public conversation is the fact that we all have implicit bias. And that's that automatic unconscious stereotypes that drive people to behave and make decisions in certain ways. And I used this quote here from a study. Walter Gilliam, I think, was in town recently. And I think Child Care Aware had brought him here. He's doing some wonderful research on, scary research on preschool expulsion and suspension. And that they're finding that Black boys are 3.5 times more likely to be suspended or expelled from preschool, early childhood settings than white preschoolers. And so he says, so that's an example of where he's specifically studying implicit bias. He even did a really interesting study where he invited teachers, early childhood teachers, African American and white teachers, to observe videos of preschool children and said, you're going to be observing some behavior problems here. And I want you to observe and tell me when you see those and what you might do about those. And in fact, he had some kind of thing that was tracking their eye gaze as they watched the screen. And both the black teachers and the white teachers focused much more of their attention on the black boys as opposed to the black girls or the white boys or girls, that there was already an implicit bias there. And I think for us to just be aware that we all have that, and that it is literally how our brain works, right? Implicit bias is our shortcut. It's like, it's like, how does a child figure out what's the difference between a dog and a cat? A dog is this and a cat is this. Well, how does a kid figure out that a Great Dane and a Chihuahua are both dogs? When they don't, they look so very little alike, but our brain is I think Ann Garrity calls it a pattern-seeking, meaning-making machine. So we're always looking for that sort of thing. So I had a little activity. I'm going to come back to this. Oh, where did it go? Okay, never mind. Sorry. We'll come back to it. So we identify our goals. Why am I intervening in this situation? Am I expecting to help? Am I expecting to protect? And am I acting on my beliefs? Why am I choosing to have this conversation or interaction at this time? And then these are some reasons why I might be deciding to have it. This is prevention. I remember being in a grocery store with my mega tantruming 3-year-old daughter, and, you know, you feel like, you know, the people are walking by going, if that were my child. And this woman walked by me and she said, oh, it's so hard raising a strong woman, isn't it? Oh. It made all the difference in the world. And that's an example of when do you want to intervene and how do you want to intervene. And that was such an amazing preventative moment. But sometimes you may choose not to intervene, which is what I should have done in the example I gave in the child care setting. When you have very strong feelings and you're afraid of what's going to come out of your mouth, there are not a lot of situations where the intervention can't wait. And again, an advantage of home visiting. You know, I observed something last week when you grabbed, you know, your child by his arm, and it was kind of rough. And I didn't say anything at the time, but I've been thinking a lot about it. Could we talk about that? But in the moment, I might have reacted in a way that was not helpful. In fact, was more hurtful. Or when you're not sure what it means. I mean, when you've walked into a situation and a parent is clearly at their wit's end and you can have a judgment, but if you knew the whole story or what had occurred beforehand or what the parent was experiencing in other situations, you may not have had the same reaction. And then disadvantages outweighing advantages. And again, a lot of that has to do with what's the nature of my relationship with this person that I've been home visiting with. Because all of these things are possibilities as outcomes. The parent could have a negative response. The parent may actually feel cared about. If we're observing an interaction and we don't comment, and this is somebody we've been doing home visiting with for a period of time, the parent may be like, what's the deal that she didn't react? Because perhaps this is a test. And we're not responding to the test. And sometimes it's okay just because it's such a strong value of yours and you need to find a way to do something. But I think this is a helpful principle that when we're intervening in the presence of a parent and a child, to try whenever possible to use language that meets the need of both the parent and the child. So a parent and a child are caught in a power struggle, and I walk into this situation and I say, you know, what's going on? And the mom says, he's just a brat today. And the kid's standing there like this. And you might say, oh, it looks like everybody's having a hard day today, right? So you're acknowledging the experience of the parent and you're acknowledging the experience of the child. And that's easier said than done in the moment, but I think it's a goal that we can always strive for. So some of the strategies are, you know, the classic trauma-informed strategy, what happened to you versus what's wrong with you in regard to what I'm watching happen in front of me. This, you know, the example I gave using humor, it's like, ay, 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 it's one of those days, isn't it? But something to try to diffuse the situation. The talking for the child, that often that's a helpful way to make a suggestion rather than suggest directly to the mom, but the baby's crying, mom's not attending, and you say, Mom, I missed you, can you pick me up? Again, this implies some relationship. And then just the empathic nonverbals, like the look on your face, your body language that says to the mom and or the kid, oh man, I get this. This is just hard. So think of a hard conversation that you may have had with somebody. And why don't you take a minute in pairs and share that with each other. Thinking about what made it challenging, what gets in your way. And we won't take the time to practice it, but just share with each other a real hard conversation and what got in the way of you having it. A hard conversation you wanted to have. On your mark, set, go.
Yeah. And that's been a very hard conversation.
Let me grab.
I think very current work right. Yeah. Kind of like figuring out how to have that conversation. Right. So I know
Okay, take one more minute.
Sometimes you do.
Okay, so what did anybody want to share? A difficult conversation or what got in the way?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Did anybody want to share a difficult conversation and what got in the way? Yeah. Can you speak as loud as you can?
Yes. So a couple weeks ago, I was with my mom and two of her kids at their early childhood screenings, and one of the girl was like trying to get my attention, but the mom was talking, so I just like lightly put my hands like on her back, and I was like, 1 second, and these kids are very like hugging me, so I knew it was okay that I just like put my hand gently on her back, and she was like, ow, like please don't touch my back today. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm so sorry. She's like, it's okay, I just have an owie on my back. And I was like, oh no, like what happened? And she said, my mommy told me I'm not allowed to tell anyone what happened. And then the mom is sitting right there saying like, shut up to the daughter. And it was like one of those situations where I was kind of like taken aback, thinking something is going on, but reading the situation, I was thinking, we're in public, the mom's clearly just like put up a reserve, like this, I don't think this is something that needs to be addressed, but this isn't the appropriate time to do that. Like the girl's not in imminent danger right now. I think that the mom wouldn't be receptive if I brought something up right now. But it was one of those situations.
I really admire that negative capability, the ability to self-awareness and reflective capability to stop and think about all those things.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
It was really hard.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, you know, I jumped to a conclusion, well, the only reason a mother would tell her kid not to do that is if this is a single parent household, is if maybe the mom hurt her daughter, maybe like hit her or whatnot. And at the same time, I was scared of jumping to conclusions. This was only like my third time meeting the family.
You were cautious about jumping.
I was cautious. Yes, thank you. I was cautious, and I was reading the situation and could see that we were in public, which is not an appropriate place to bring up those conversations that a mom's clearly already stepping back. But then I'm thinking, oh my goodness, is this something I call child protection about?
But that's a great example of one of those in the moment, difficult conversations. And we can talk about it as barriers, or we can talk about the way you described it was a fairly reflective process that you went through in terms of the timing, the place, and so forth. So thank you, that's a great example. And I will admit to you that I kind of faked this activity a little bit because I realized I had the wrong PowerPoint presentation in, which is why I was looking for the slide that wasn't there. And then Connie helped me fix it. So can we go back for a second? Before we do anything else on the difficult conversation. So, back to implicit bias. I knew I had more on that. I just wanted to try a little exercise in implicit bias. I'm not sure this is going to work. But before we get to that, I want to just make a differentiation. I love this term, cultural humility. And these particular quotes are from a wonderful paper by Charlotte Harper Brown, who does the Strengthening Families work, the 5 protective factors, if you're all familiar with that. This particular paper is called Branching Out and Reaching Deeper, and it's available through the Center for the Study of Social Policy, CSSP.org. Or if you just put in protective factors, you probably get it. But she talks about cultural humility as an active self-reflection and critical consciousness of one's own assumptions, beliefs, values, and worldview, knowing the limitations of one's own perspective. Now that's very different than cultural competence, which means I've studied the Somali culture and I know a lot about it, right? That's good, that's important, but more important is knowing what our own culture is, because so often for those of us in the dominant culture, our culture, our assumptions, our values, all of that is the norm against which everybody else's are measured. And so if we're unaware that we do have a culture, we do have assumptions, then we're going to miss a lot. And so I wanted to just try this. Work with me here. Maybe. So this is just a demonstration of what do I mean by implicit bias. I want you to fill in the blank with me. A comedian makes us laugh by telling a joke. Okay. Little Red Riding Hood wore a red cape. Oh, good. Good. Oh.
I did, don't worry.
It was a cape with a hood. It was a cape with a hood. Okay. Swallowing water down the wrong pipe may cause you to choke. The white part of an egg is called the yolk.
The white.
Oh my gosh. I fell for it. But that's an example of implicit bias. Your brain was making a shortcut. This is a rhyming exercise, right? Oh, so the white part of an egg is called a yolk because my brain was on that track. Right?
Wow.
That's a form of implicit bias.
I was like,
In the
what is
sense
the white
that
part called?
when I see a tall black man wearing a hoodie, think of all those movies I've seen. Think of all the things I've seen in the news. I mean, not to oversimplify it, but I think just to know it is literally the way our brain works. And so it's I think, a helpful thing to acknowledge.
And now I know what a cloak is.
What? I know. Right.
We didn't help your scenario.
Okay. No. The exercise might have, but you get the point. It is literally the way our brain works, which is just a way to try to diffuse. Have someone stand there and say, you have implicit bias. No, I don't. There's implicit bias. We've been doing some work in another project I'm involved in on implicit bias. And the woman who's facilitating it said that there was a study of what are the things that most people are afraid of being called. And second only to child molester is racist. That we in the dominant culture have a terrible fear of being racist, and our defense against that makes it hard for us to think about implicit bias. So it's an attempt to just, everybody has implicit bias, to normalize that. So when you're confronted with difficult conversations, what are some of the coping strategies you can do with having intense feelings in the moment? You're in a home visit, something's going terribly awry here. What are some strategies some of you might use? I'll give you a hint. There's one I use. Breathe, right?
I also try to open my body. So body language is really important so that I continue to hear people. I have to physically uncross my arms and uncross my legs so that I can hear them. Because I know that I shut people off and I stop hearing everything when my legs are crossed and when my arms are crossed. And I have learned that about my listening skills, that I have to really be open and allow things to be heard completely.
And in doing so, you're literally also resetting your brain. Because when you're like that, your autonomic nervous system is in that mode. And when you can consciously, whether it's breathing or literally physically opening up your body, you really are resetting your brain. So that's a great example. But the point is, I think we all need and use coping strategies, and it's helpful to hear other people's just because it's the way to open it up. And in the context of reflective practice, reflective supervision, consultation, that is something that would be a topic of conversation, hopefully. So let's get to what is that. So reflective consultation, parallel process, and again, just like we think of with the parent and we're a partner in home visiting, we partner with the parent. The supervisor consultant also seeks to partner with the supervisee. So it's a form of professional development, and these are some of the key concepts. It's a lot about the process. It's less about problem solving, which is what most of us are trained to do, and more about, again, that stepping back, considering all the possibilities, acknowledging the feelings because that's potential information, and it becomes a shared exploration. And I think, so if we're asking, starting at the beginning, we talked about reflective functioning and why it's necessary for parenting, but we can't give what we don't get. So how do we make sure that the home visitors have the same experience that we're asking them to provide to the parent that we're hoping eventually the parent will provide to the child? So it has to be a safe relationship where it's okay to talk about hard things. It's okay to talk about my mistakes. It's okay to talk about the fact that I just don't like this family, and let's unpack that. Because often we don't like a family because they make us feel incompetent, right? It's this shared process. It's not advice giving. And these are, this is being developed right now at the University of Minnesota. They're working on trying to sort of quantify what is reflective consultation. And they identify these as the essential elements, that we understand the family story. So if I have the opportunity to just tell the story out loud, what was my experience in that home visit, that often just the chance to step back and tell this story, I will have a new perspective and new insights myself just because I got to tell the story. It's about that professional use of self, which is, again, inherent in relationship-based work. The agent of change in home visiting, we can have the best curriculum in the world, but research tells us that the agent of change is actually the home visitor's relationship with the family. That holding the baby in mind. I mean, how many times, for those of you who do supervision at home visiting, do you hear about how hard it is to stay focused on the baby because of all the drama and the chaos that the family is dealing with? And so it's that ability to say, I'm so sorry you had that fight with your boyfriend. That must have been awful. Where was the baby when that happened? And what were you worried about the baby? But bringing it back to the child, being the voice for the child, and then again, the parallel process. So we want to slow the work down. We want to establish boundaries and scope of practice. Because again, I think, I've done a lot of different kinds of work, but I think home visiting is one of the most difficult because the only boundaries you got are the ones you bring in internally. It's so much easier to see a family in my office, come in, sit in my chair, play with my toys, and I will tell you when we're done, right? Home visiting, there's nothing there but what I bring in and how challenging that can be. And even if you've got the best boundaries in the world, I think inevitably there will be that situation, that family where, whoops, it can slip away. And so we need to have the opportunity to explore that on a regular basis. It can also help with maintaining quality, fidelity to a particular model, and especially that it reduces stress and burnout. And we're getting a larger and larger body of research that tells us that. And again, if we're doing relationship-based work, we know that continuity with the home visitor and retention of families and dosage is a huge part of what makes home visiting successful. And so we want to do everything we can to reduce stress and burnout for home visitors and replenish the reserves that they need. And then also to explore issues of implicit bias and cultural humility. And I think if we just build that in, it becomes an easier thing to talk about. I think we have time. I wanted to show you a little video of what reflective consultation can look like. this time they will help me.
Well, you get that going. Can I just make a plug to the pieces that Michelle just talked about? So if you haven't been on the website on our training page, part of the foundational series, the first in the foundational series, Michelle and Katie Lingris actually led a session on trauma and the impact on the home visitor, and then there's some reflective questions. I highly recommend you share that. It was a great presentation, and the reflective questions are great. So if you're doing reflective supervision in your work, it really helps you think about it as a supervisor, how your home visiting staff are really impacted themselves by continually going into family homes or situations and dealing with events that can be traumatic. So I just want to make the plug. Well, we had that minute. I didn't know if you would make the connection back, but it's a really nice segue, which is why we ended the foundational series again with Michelle talking about this.
And let me also take this opportunity. Are there questions, either here in the room or online?
Our online friends, we're still with us. We can see you again.
No questions? Okay. So just push that one. So this is a Head Start setting. So it's a classroom, not a home visiting situation. But notice the qualities of how the supervisor is partnering with the teacher, her use of open-ended questions, pay attention to the strategies that she's seeing and why this would be considered a reflective interaction. And then,
yeah, I just, there's a bullying. Oh.
not missing dialogue, there should be music playing.
Yeah, that's fine. So,
As high as it goes is 0.
right, I think it's a speaker issue. These don't have subtitles, do they?
No.
Okay. Then not before, go ahead.
Okay. I thought we had Michael on retainer.
I have to find.
Well, I apologize. We thought we had this all worked out.
Can I ask you then a question?
Sure.
Could you say more about these two questions that I'm kind of ruminating over? More about these essential elements, and also thinking about how reflective practice can help us deliver programs to fidelity or curriculum to fidelity. If you could speak to that, that would be really helpful.
Sure. Fidelity. For those of you, somebody's here from your family partnership, Healthy Families is represented. What are some of the fidelity issues you would be concerned about maintaining?
For Healthy Families, embedded in the practice standards is infant mental health expertise and reflective supervision. So just having it available for our teams is a requirement. So, and that would be keeping us in fidelity to the model. And then Also embedded in the standards is the whole parallel practice, which is exactly what you talked about for
So hopefully
keeping the.
the supervisors would be well aware of that. But as you said, in that model, and I believe in NFP, and I don't know family-wise, but tell me, the supervisors themselves are receiving reflective supervision and consultation in order to maintain and, you know, so the parallel process goes way, way back. And having been a reflective consultant to the supervisors in healthy families, I can tell you that I also get my own reflective consultation to do that piece of the work. What was your other question, Laura?
Okay, so thank you for helping me understand more about what you're talking about. But I would love to know more about these essential elements and how they're, it's slide before that, yep. How they're going to be used within reflective supervision and so is it more for the practice of reflective supervision, or is it in the training of those who are doing?
It would be actually in the practice. Right.
Yep.
So, for example, and there are a number of ways to do reflective supervision and consultation, but these would be the elements you'd want to see. So whether I'm seeing somebody individually, a home visitor individually, or we have a group of, you are a group of home visitors and we're going to be doing reflective consultation. At least in Dakota County, what we did was one person was designated to have present a case. And in doing that, they would tell the story of the family, what they hoped to hear, and then people would be inquiring and asking more questions and just shifting the home visitor's perspective.
And this would be like embedded, like within NFP, we have a strength and risk assessment framework that we fill out. So this would be like embedded into that process of determining and working through the strengths and the risks of the mom and baby and family.
And is that done in partnership then between the home visitor and the supervisor? Okay. And so we can be thinking of this as a individual interaction, or it can be a group interaction. Another way to do it is to just say to people, you know, we're going around the room, what's on your mind? Who has something that they'd like to talk about today? But again, it isn't just, it's presenting the story, the family story, because so much information, and a lot of times if you draw it out and you're doing the genogram and you're writing the strengths and you're writing the challenges, that just having the home visitor see this massive thing on the board is like, no wonder this feels so hard. It really is that complicated. So that telling the story part is really important. And then the partnering. I'm sorry, Molly, go ahead.
I'm just curious, like, how that then can be trained for, like, the home visitors are trained to relationships with, like, in early childhood studies, or you're trying to do reflective practice with groups of teachers who have it, they have a different lens. So how do you kind of help prepare them for what reflective supervision, reflective practice, reflective communication is?
Right.
It's not in there. I mean, that's not how their brain is typically.
Right. So I think kind of like I tried to organize this day, you would be talking about reflective functioning in the parents that we work with, right? I mean, because that would be just embedded in high quality home visiting is how do we help the mom be able to read the cues of their baby and respond contingently and all of that good stuff. So the hope is that it would emerge sort of organically out of the process that we're hoping home visitors are already engaging in. But in my experience doing reflective consultation groups, I think it takes about 6 months at least to really give the group the experience that this really is a safe space, and we're not here to judge you, and we're not here to say, well, did you do this? Did you do that? And that's the way most of us are trained. And the job of the reflective consultant is to try to say, well, let's step back from that and wonder, so what have you tried? Well, how did that go? What do you think that was like for the baby? What else is going on that you feel like you need to find out to better understand this family? But I think that it isn't enough to walk in a room and sit down and say, okay, we're going to reflect now. That really is a process that takes till people really have the experience of it's really safe. So we talk about reflective supervision as very different from administrative supervision because, and the truth is, most of us as supervisors have to do both. But it's trying to be very clear and differentiate with the people that we supervise which I'm doing. All right, right now I have my administrative hat on, and you're a month behind in your paperwork, and that's really impacting our billing. Now, if I say, that's my administrative problem, but I could then put on my reflective hat and say, can you help me understand what's getting in the way of your being able to do your paperwork? And how can I be helpful with that? I can't change the fact that the paperwork has got to be done, but I could explore the barriers in a reflective way until it doesn't work, and then it, maybe I have to be totally administrative. But I think for the supervisors to be clear about which kind of supervision am I doing right now and be transparent with the supervisees. Is that answering your question, Molly? Okay. Thank you. Now we're really going to watch it. So again, pay attention to the strategies that the supervisor is using here.
Just buffering.
Oh.
Not buffering anything. I think it's the internet connection or something.
Take it off, but not him.
Spinning wheel of death.
And the other thing we could do is make this available online.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Marlene.
Thank you for calling me.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, no. I heard your voice and I said, uh-oh, gotta go.
Yeah. I just had okay, I've been having problems with Todd.
Yes.
And today was just like, I just don't know what to do anymore. I don't want to call you because, I know I can handle stuff, but after today, I don't know what to do. You know how he's great, and then not so much, and then great, and well, today he came in, and I was trying to talk to his parents, but they're like, oh, you just need to put more activities out to really challenge him, and I was trying to be really nice about it, and I was like, okay, if you have anything specific, we'll do that, just let me know, and then they left, and then he was doing fine, and we went outside, and everything was going really good, and we came back in, and I'd given him a warning, because, we had talked about, really letting him know, so I did that. And then he just freaked out. He just started yelling and he started screaming, and then all the other kids were starting to get upset, and we were trying to, trying to be really nice and calm and redirect him, but it just wouldn't work. And so I just had to take everybody over to the other side of the room, and then he just had to stay over there. I don't know what else to do.
Wow, it was quite a day today, huh?
I'm doing everything we've talked about doing, and I'm getting no support from his parents, and they think he's just so smart, which he is, but they don't see all this other stuff. And now I have other parents coming up to me, and they're saying, I don't think we should bring our kids back here anymore. I've never had that happen.
Wow, that's a lot of things you're thinking of, because now you're not only focusing on Todd, but you're focusing on all the children and all the strategies you put in place, and now you're wondering, oh, what's going on?
Okay, I love kids,
Yes.
but this one, I think we're just at a point to go to another classroom. I don't know what else to do.
Right. How do you think he'll do in another classroom?
Well, I don't have to worry about that. Do I?
He'll be like, whew.
Right? And then another teacher can deal with it, and another teacher can talk to his parents about it and see if they can get through to them. His parents aren't understanding. He's so smart, but he can't. We come inside a minute before we're supposed to, and he can't handle it. And then he breaks down, and I feel like I can't handle it.
Okay.
And I can't feel like that in my classroom. What
So
do
I
do?
just- Well, I heard you saying that maybe possible transferring, so we can write that one as a possible solution, so a possible transfer. Okay, that's one choice that we can explore. What are some other choices that maybe that you think that, we can explore together?
Can you make his parents listen?
Okay, maybe involving parents? Do you think
Because
that?
they don't listen to me.
Okay,
With them, I feel like I'm just batting my head against the wall. Like, oh, you need to do this, and they're talking about that, and then da-da-da. So then I'm pulling as much as I can, pulling those things in to help out. And he does get really engaged with them, and it's great. But then he has these meltdowns, and I mean, I can always work with the kids with the hard stuff, with the parents that have all the issues that are going on. I work with those kids. I don't ever have problems with them. And he won't look at me. He just goes in this world, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's like he goes somewhere else, and I don't know what to do.
and as a team, we don't know what to do yet.
Like, I tell them this is what's going on, and it's literally like,
Do you think that they have concerns that they don't want to hear? Or do you think there's something else that what they're doing right now is just trying to fix something that they don't want to talk about?
I don't know. I guess if I was a parent, that would be really hard information to hear.
For some reason, there's something that's stopping the parents from just letting us know this side of Todd that we see, but we don't know how to, we haven't heard it from them.
Marlene, I feel like crying because I don't know what to do.
And it's okay.
No, it's not.
Why not?
Because I need to know. I'm supposed to know. That's why you hired me.
I hire you because of your compassion, because the love you have to working with children, because you have the talent to get the children to where they need to be in their developmental stages. I hire you because you are an enthusiastic teacher that's always looking for the best things, not only for the children you have in the classroom, but for the whole site. You are that teacher that we hire. You are that teacher. And we are here for that same reason, because you want to help Todd. But we just don't know how. I don't know how either. But together we can find out. I can assure you that you don't have to be in this alone. I can assure you that together, two things can happen. One, we can talk to parents and see what we can do. Or two, the parents, after talking to them, can decide this is not the environment I want to be. Not because Todd does not do well here, but because I'm not ready to discuss what I need to discuss.
I wish that when he came in, I could just give him a big hug and let him know he's safe here, and that this is a space for him to grow and learn. But it's something about when he comes in, it's not an option for him. And so I don't know how to greet him in a way that he still feels welcomed to the classroom and loved, because I'm missing something.
And this is when we go back again, that the key to all of this is not about you not doing what you're not doing or what you're doing or what you're missing. It's nothing in relations to you. It's about what parents can share with us. And we cannot make them share anything that they don't want to share, but we can guide them, we can help them. I wonder how a parent sees it coming into a classroom.
With their big sunglasses on because they're not seeing it.
Right, and I wonder what is bringing that up for them. And I wonder how, it's just there's so many wondering things in this case. And one of the things that I know we have to hold, just like you're holding Todd, and that you want to make sure that you know there's something we don't quite understand. And one of the things, the only thing that we can do right now is to hold all of your red flags. Hold them there, because that's your professionalism, that's your knowledge. That's where you want to hold. And now what we do is when we do talk to the parent.
We'll stop there, it's almost over, but how many of you would like to have Marlene as your supervisor, right? What did she do? What do you notice her doing that seemed to really be effective with Lindsay, who started out like this? Right? What was Marlene doing? What did you notice?
One of the things she validated her skill. Why she was doing it.
Even to the point of saying, when she said, maybe it should be another classroom, and probably that's not even possible, she goes, well, think about that. I mean, but it was like, I get it, right? Yeah.
So that she wasn't in it alone.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm going to watch this and count how many times she says we. When Lindsay says, I don't know what to do, she says, we don't know what to do. And that's okay. We'll figure it out together, right? What else?
She went through the essential elements.
Without looking at the sheet, yeah.
Okay, she just went through those. She did.
She listened so patiently at the beginning, so she could really talk and tell the story.
That was some, and the questions were the reflective kind of questions, but mostly you're right, she just listened.
And she opened with such a nice line. I heard your voice and I knew I needed to come here. And I thought, well, there they clearly have a relationship. But,
I'm holding you, baby. It's okay, right? Yeah. I realize we're out of time, but any thoughts or would love to, if we had time to talk about where you are with whatever. Where you are with this in your own organization, what are the areas? Thank you. But if we can, this is the commercial break, that at the association we do a lot of training in reflective consultation, and we are better at knowing what our technological issues might be. But if you're interested in finding out about availability of reflective consultants to work with your group and or training, please don't hesitate to contact either Ariel at the organization or myself, and we can hook you up with folks who are willing to do that. And we're doing more and more with the Zoom platform, which I was very suspicious of at the beginning, but it actually, I've become a convert to the fact that you can do reflective consultation in real time, being able to see each other, even if the consultant isn't close to where you are. So, any last questions or thoughts? Thank you for your patience with the technology.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are out of time, so if any of you have some time and want to do a little bit of networking and connect with one another, please, we have room for a little bit longer. We do have evaluation forms. We had a history of asking you to complete them. If you didn't get one and you want to fill one, I'll give one to you. We'd love your feedback on what we can do to improve these meetings. For those of you online, I'll make sure you get a copy because we didn't post that in the meeting folder. So thank you, Atande, for running all the technology. I totally appreciate that. More than you will ever know. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Your suggestions for our next meeting in September, please do so. And our chairs, any last outward? Any last words? Yeah. There you go. All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.